Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about major scale patterns. First off, download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. It contains everything that I'm talking about in this lesson, all the charts and diagrams, as well as much more, so it'll be really useful to you. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download that. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it may not be available as you're watching this lesson. And if it's not available yet, it'll say coming soon. And if you'd like to get notified when it is available, you can sign up for our mailing list and we'll send you a notification for when it is available and let you download it. And also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all the charts and diagrams will be on the screen. And also, we add at least one new lesson every day, so be sure to subscribe. This is part 9 in our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in the last lessons, we've been talking about the major scale, and we're going to continue in this lesson because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the major scale, and it's really important to understand. So far, you've learned how to build the major scale, the formula to use, and the intervals in the major scale. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use patterns to visualize the major scale up and down the fretboard. So we're going to start where we left off in the last lesson with the major scale on the 6th string right here. And this is technically an F major scale, but we're not worried about that right now. All we're worried about are these intervals. And these intervals and the distances between notes will always stay the same. It's just wherever your root note is, that's going to put these in a different spot on the fretboard. The only reason I'm starting with F major scale is because it's the lowest fretted note I can get in standard tuning, and it'll allow me to show you the scale up and down the whole fretboard easily. So this is a 1 octave major scale like I showed in the last lesson. You're starting with the root and you go up 1 octave to the root again. So you go to the major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th, then you're back to the root again 1 octave higher. Now here's this major scale on the whole fretboard as far as I've drawn the frets. So all we've done is taken the root, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and repeated it over and over again up the whole fretboard. And how high you can go on your guitar just depends how many frets your guitar has. And all guitars are different, so especially when you're talking between acoustic guitars and electric guitars have more frets than acoustic guitars. But there's also a difference between acoustic guitar to acoustic guitar and electric guitar to electric guitar as far as how many frets they have. So I'm sure looking at this is really daunting to think, how could you possibly memorize where all these notes are? And the way you do that is to break apart this scale or any major scale into patterns. And those patterns you use are going to stay the same for every single major scale. It's just they're going to be on a different spot on the neck depending where your root note is. So you only have to learn the patterns once and then you just move them to the other keys. The shapes of the patterns will always stay the same. And this will be clearer as we move into this more. That might be a little confusing if you've never heard about that before. And there's many options for different patterns that you can use. I'm going to show you a set of patterns that I like the most for starting out. But other teachers will teach other patterns. I teach other patterns as well down the road, but this is a good starting point in my opinion. And the patterns I'm going to show you, there's going to be 7 of them, and that's because they start on each note of the scale. There's 7 notes in the major scale, so each pattern starts on each note. So the pattern number 1 starts on the root, pattern number 2 starts on the major 2nd, pattern number 3 starts on the major 3rd, and so on. So here is major scale pattern number 1. So as you can see, what we've done is take a portion of the whole scale up the whole neck and just broken out a piece of it. So we started here with the root and we just went in order. Root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, repeated root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root 2, 3. So it ended on that higher major 3rd. So this is just over 2 octaves. You have your first root up to your first octave and then up to another octave, and then it goes 2 notes past. So you would play this on the guitar. To memorize this, you would play those notes in order. You would play root first, then the 2nd, then the 3rd, and just go in order exactly like it's laid out on this diagram. But this lesson isn't about how to play it or how to practice it. I have other lessons for that. This is just the theory behind it. So if we go back to what we started with the whole major scale up and down the whole fretboard, you'll be able to see that pattern number 1 starts right here on this root, and it covers these notes. So that's where pattern number 1 lies compared to the whole major scale up the whole fretboard. Then if we were to go to pattern number 2, it would look like this. Now we're starting on the second note of the scale, which is the major second, and we're going up in order again and end right here. And if we compare this back to the scale on the whole fretboard, it starts right here and it covers all these notes. So you can see that pattern number 2 shares notes with pattern number 1. Pattern number 1 was right here. So those share a lot of the same notes. And that's what all the patterns will do. They will connect with each other up the whole fretboard. So then pattern number 3 looks like this. And again, you can relate that back to where it lands on the whole fretboard. Pattern number 4 looks like this. You can do the same thing. It connects with pattern number 3. 3 connects with number 2. Here's pattern number 5. Same thing, just relate it back to the whole fretboard and how it connects with pattern number 4. Here's pattern number 6. Same thing. And here's the last pattern, pattern number 7. So if we go back to the whole fretboard, this is where pattern number 7 starts. And that's the whole pattern right there. So you can see if you were just to draw circles around where each of the patterns were, they would all connect, they would all share a bunch of the same notes. And what you would do when you're practicing these, you would learn pattern number 1, get it under your fingers, then you would learn pattern number 2, memorize that, get on your fingers, all the way up to pattern number 7, and then you would learn how to connect them all so that you could play them all up and down the whole fretboard. And that way you would be able to visualize where all the notes of the major scale land on the fretboard. Then once you could do it starting on F or wherever you start, this doesn't matter, you could start with G or C or whatever, then you would move it to another starting point, which would be another key, but I'll talk about keys in another lesson. So if I move this to G, I'd be in the key of G, I'd do the same thing, and all the notes would just shift over to accommodate to land on where G is starting as my root note. And again, this isn't a lesson about how to practice these patterns and how to connect them. I have other lessons about that. This is just the theory behind it because it's important to understand the theory and what's going on. And in the upcoming lessons, we'll dive even deeper into this and break this apart even more so it becomes even clearer to you. And you can understand how this ties together with octaves and unison notes like we talked about before and much more. So just move on to the next lessons. It's going to be clearer and clearer to you as you go through these lessons. Just like I've been talking about, you can't just see it all as one big picture. You have to get all these little pictures, put them together, keep going back, gaining more little pictures, and eventually it all tie together and fill in all the gaps and make sense to you. So again, be sure to download the free e-guide to use as a reference. You'll use it often. And be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.